Hello and welcome to Systems Integration is the Gas That Fuels Growth webinar, hosted by Racami and Madison Advisors. Over the next 45 minutes, you'll hear from Racami's own EVP of Sales and Marketing, Matt Mahoney, who is responsible for cultivating Racami's relationships with customers and partners involved in the production of highly regulated consumer communications, direct marketing, commercial printing, and book publishing. And Jeff Walden, Senior Analyst for Madison Advisors, who provides project-based advisory services in the customer communications management marketplace to enterprise accounts and print service providers. In addition to CCM solutions, Jeff also has extensive knowledge of output management systems, including print management, workflow systems, and electronic delivery solutions. They will be leading an interactive discussion about the situations that drive companies to integrate their systems and how to approach these complex projects to achieve the best outcomes. This discussion focuses on customer communications management, but is also relevant to commercial printing, direct marketing, lead generation, and book manufacturing, where disparate systems lead to inefficiencies, quality problems, and hinder growth. So, before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes. We are recording this webinar. Everyone is on mute, so please use the question bar on the bottom right side of the control panel to ask questions. All right, I think we can begin now, so take it away, Jeff.
Great, thanks, Andrea. So, as Matt and I were talking about this, we figured that sort of the first place to start was to do some level setting so everybody's on the same page of what we're talking about. And the whole idea behind system integration is it leads to something, right? So we're adding value to the customer experience. And that's the, I know that today customer experience is sort of the, the big buzzword. It's what everybody wants to deal with. But so customer experience is the sum of all the interactions that a customer has with a company. So, whether that's working on a website, going through an app, receiving paper in the mail, getting a welcome kit, getting a phone call from someone, or when they call in, the way that they get customer service, all of that goes into shaping the customer's feelings about a particular brand and company. And so what we're looking to help people with here is how do you improve the customer experience within customer communications management space. So CCM, customer communications management, is all about creation, delivery, storage, and then retrieval of outbound communications. So that's marketing, new products, statements, invoices, policies, any correspondence that's gone back and forth in terms of account management for the customer in this environment. So, this is typically, if you think about it, it's first-class mail is mostly how this stuff happens. And CCM has also expanded beyond for communication. It's stuff that was typically sent first class, and it is now includes a variety of different electronic mechanisms. So you might send someone an email with a PDF attached. You might send them an email saying, go to our portal. That's where your changed documents are located. You might send a text message with the same information, or it might be you're approaching your credit limit kind of message. All of that stuff comes under the heading of customer communications management. So some of the challenges that companies are facing in this area are really meeting customer expectations. So they have a lot of difficulty providing a consistent interaction with a customer, particularly as companies have acquired other companies in the same business, and suddenly you've got one overarching company name, but then as they go to market in different segments, you might see different names because of, for example, an insurance company might be licensed to do business in some states but not others. So you may have thought you bought from company ABC, but suddenly you're getting communications from company XYZ. Another challenge is providing a fully integrated customer communication preferences. So, for example, I want to get my statements, my annual statement in the mail as paper, but I'd like my monthly and quarterly ones just put on the website and get an email that alerts me when they're there. So understanding what level of granularity customers are looking for in their communication and then delivering on it is a key thing. Just a little anecdotal story here. We had one client that we worked with who allowed people to set up all of their communications with the company to be electronic. And they still found that they were sending on average 9 pieces of mail to those companies who had said, don't send me an email each year. And you take a look at that, you know, you're let's suppose you're in the $5 per client rate. And, you know, suddenly you take that times 1 million clients or 2 million clients, and suddenly, because your systems aren't set up to handle the customer's communication preference, you're spending a lot of money and sending stuff to a customer in a different manner than they've asked for it. So that impacts not only the company's bottom line, but also the perception that the customer has of the company. Okay, so another challenge, effectively using data stores to know your customer. So, for example, this comes down to sort of siloed information where you've got pieces of the company interaction with a client in a variety of different places because, you know, you bought a system, it does one line of business, and then there's another system for a different line of business. Now you want to have a better communication policy. You want to be able to see both of those platforms, and that becomes difficult. And then the concept of meeting clients everywhere is how does the customer want to talk to the company? So might be an app, might be, you know, text messages, might be a bot on a website. So the idea is, you know, figuring out where all those touch points are and how to achieve what the customers are looking for. So if we just run through a typical customer journey here, on the left-hand side, you've got sort of outbound communications where you're taking data, using a composition tool of some kind to take the data and format it and make it look, you know, intelligible, so that people can say, oh, this is a statement. I understand how the data is laid out, et cetera. So, sorry. So then you've got in the circle here, you've got a customer. They might get a welcome kit, could be a fulfillment, you know, kit, a bunch of bound stuff as well as loose pieces, some forms that they need to complete. That's sort of on the intake side. And then on the bottom, you've got statements and letters that might go out over time to that same customer, depending upon where they are in their life cycle. So the other side is you've got the client sending things into the company, and most paper-based things that come in today get imaged and then they get either emailed to some location or they get put into a workflow automatically, and then they get processed into, you know, whatever's going to happen, and then they get stored. So down in the bottom right here, you've got an archive of documents that are associated with case management. You know, sort of something you'd use a tool like Salesforce or something like that to track all the interactions that a customer service rep has had with the company. And then on the left side, you've got an archive that's dedicated to what documents were sent out in what format at various times, and that usually includes information like what other things went into the envelope, such as inserts or booklets, whatever they happen to be. So this is what sort of how the customer is experiencing things within, you know, with a typical company. So really, what the customer wants is sort of all this stuff on the left-hand side, but more, you know, this is basically showing that the inbound and outbound are now integrated so that you have a single point of history with the client in terms of a unified archive, which is then used in concert with a preference management tool to send information to the customer in the format that they are interested in receiving it. And then when we look at things, so that version back there was sort of the the high level kind of thing that you're looking at. This is a little bit more down into the IT world, where you look at all the components that have to go into making that CCM platform. So on the left-hand side, you've got the core system data, customers' transactions, etc. And then third-party data. You may be merging in psychographic information, demographic information, whatever it happens to be, as a part of the depending on what you're trying to send out. And then CRM data, like when was the last time they called in, things like that, in terms of what are the recent interactions that the client has had. And that can go into a data aggregation and normalization mode, and that's so that all the data that comes in gets put into a common format, so that the other tools within the system understand how to use it. So you've got then you've got up in the red, you've got a capture engine, which would feed information into the archives. Profile and delivery preference management. So depending upon what comes out of here, it might come to this composition engine that's in the center. It might go through a post-composition tool for either print optimization, or coming down here on the bottom right, coming through a multi-channel delivery mechanism. And this is really the meeting the customer where they want to be world. And then all the information being archived together. And then the big piece is, you got all these tools. You really need some kind of system, whether dashboard, whatever. It's really a workflow control system that knows where a particular document is in this process, and if there's been any exceptions or things like that. So this is really the sort of the high level piece, but each one of these components could be in existence today, and it could be from several pieces, could be from one company, one software company, or you may have multiples. For example, composition engines. You probably have 4 composition engines in any given enterprise, just because of when they were when an application was developed, if it was an acquisition, whatever it happens to be, there's usually multiples of those. So the idea is here, you may not find one tool that's going to do all the stuff in this picture. So what you're looking for is a tool that can really take this and create the integrated solution based on the tools you've already got. So we don't want to reinvent the world here. And that the real business value here comes from taking a bunch of siloed information that's basically you can see fragments of the total picture in any one of the silos, and basically creating a whole picture by integrating those disparate systems. So that's sort of just sets us off on the sort of a positioning of where we are in this presentation. So you've got some terminology stuff there. But what I'd like to do is ask Matt a question here, because so far we've been talking really about first-class mail communications, right? Typical financial services, insurance companies, et cetera. So Matt, what are you guys seeing in terms of other applications where a similar level of integration and control is necessary? And I'm thinking fulfillment kits, commercial print, books, sort of print on demand, one copy kind of booklets and the like.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So all those that you described, and not just the first-class mailers, but the book manufacturers and really anybody who's doing sort of high volume printing, we'll say, or high volume communications of some sort. These are consumers of technology, right? They have software, they have hardware that they're using to get work out the door, and it could be a mix of things from different vendors. And so this idea, this concept of an integrated platform, I think is useful for a lot of different cases, right? And on the screen you see things like on the left, healthcare. So in the healthcare market, and I'll drill down on this one a little bit later here to show you how a fulfillment house integrated with their customers' healthcare company Cerner system, and why they did that and what value that brings. You'll see it in marketing. And by the way, these are all examples of things that Racami has been involved in. But from a marketing perspective, there are companies that consume technology there, right? And you have things like homegrown tools and storefronts and letter writing tools or document composition tools. And so those disparate systems, some of them have data in them, and there's reasons to make them work together so that people aren't doing double entry, or there's sometimes a customer experience that you want to present on screen, and that experience is driven by multiple systems behind the scenes. In insurance, you'll see things like integration for production control between maybe multiple different types of systems, mainframes and server systems. And as you mentioned before, somebody might have 4 different composition tools. They might also have 4 different print management systems. And so there's integration benefits there. Education is another one where you'll see things like, in this example, we have kitting of classroom materials that are all printed in a certain way through an integrated platform. And with the MIS systems that are there, making sure that inventory information is shared across systems, and the consumption of that, and creating the right materials at the right time, putting them all in a box, and making sure that you're not overfilling the box, that it actually rolls over to another box. And so there's a lot of information that exists in systems that, with business rules applied and some automation, and the integration of those things can produce good productivity for the operation. We also see it in the government agencies. A lot of that now is driven by the presentation of electronic versions of documents over the web, and online payments of tax bills, things like that. So where you may need to integrate the payment system with the accounting system or the government management system that they're using. And in book manufacturing, it has a lot to do with integration of the production equipment through JDF and JMF and other techniques, where you can sort of see what's going on with all the equipment, and in one central place, manage that activity. So, and then at the very top here, we have in the CCM space, especially, where you have customer communications like bills and EOBs and these transactional documents. There's a lot of consolidation going on there. And so the integration of companies, you may have 10 different companies that have been acquired, all with their own management systems and processing systems and so on. And so the integration there is really important to make sure that, from an enterprise perspective, you're getting the most out of the enterprise, but also that the work flows efficiently, and everybody can meet the deadlines, and they have the information at their hands that they need at any given moment to do their jobs. So I guess the answer to your question, Jeff, is there's a lot of overlap between the CCM needs for like an ADF or a fully integrated system, and those that use similar equipment and consume similar technologies, as I described here. Yep. So one of them is this healthcare that I'll just drill down on to give you a little more perspective on this, a little more detail. And so on the left-hand side, we have a commercial and transactional printer. They print both commercial type of work and transactional bills and so on. And their customer over here on the right-hand side is a large healthcare company. And what this solution does is it provides the healthcare company with a means to educate their customers, or not customers, so their patients, with pamphlets and literature and things that teach them how to take care of themselves. So for example, if you have kidney disease, you're getting dialysis, and you have also heart trouble, there's going to be a certain set of literature they send to you to teach you how to take care of yourself with that combination. Maybe you have diabetes and need kidney care, then you would get a different set of literature. And the same thing applies with like the different providers. So it might be branded depending on the insured. the insurer for this. So a lot of different combinations that can be ordered. And the way this works is the nurses here on the right, you see their picture there, are using Cerner to run the business. This is the medical records system, the electronic medical records system. It has all the patient chart and the history of care for the patients and so on. And but it doesn't have a way, Cerner, to place orders for literature. It just doesn't support that. So we implemented a solution here where the nurses go to I'll just draw some lines here so you can follow along with me. They go to a portal out on the web, a secure portal. And when they log in with their credentials, then they can key in a patient number and name and find that patient. How do they find the patient? Well, the system that they use for fulfillment here at this provider is synchronized with Cerner. So they're using this system from Racami called Alchemy. And it has the concept in it, not only of managing jobs and pieces and all that kind of stuff, files, but it knows about people, individuals. And so we're able to synchronize this data model with the Cerner data model and get patient information in here and securely store it. And that way, when a nurse logs in, they can find their patient. And then they can select the literature that they want. There's about 300 different pieces of literature they could choose from. And when they do that, then they click order, and it'll accumulate an order in here. And when we get enough orders, then it will trigger the integration, another integration point here with Midnight, which is an MIS system they use at this company to manage their inventory and create the job tickets and so on to tell the production floor what to do. So it triggers an order in Midnight automatically through the integration, and then it goes and they fulfill and it gets mailed. And so you see multiple points of integration here, the Alchemy and the Cerner system. This is, by the way, through a secure HL7 format, which is a healthcare secure format. And then internally within the company through API with Midnight. And then there's also some connection points into production so that people could see on the Alchemy dashboard what's going on with production. And so so that it's an interesting thing that they have going on here, and there's a lot of benefits they could gain from this, Jeff.
Well, that's actually a good question. I mean, first of all, this is a good transition from my talk, because my stuff was really talking about essentially a one-to-one communication where every document that goes out is unique to the person that's receiving it. And here you've got, because it's literature fulfillment, you've got an existing set of documents that you're basically sending to the patients depending upon what's specified. So you've got more of a one-to-many model going on here. So I'm wondering, because I see opportunities for a variety of different places. So what did the company get from, and I'm assuming the commercial printer was essentially your customer, but what was the value that they received, and sort of is that a model that we can sort of extend to other companies in terms of value and just enhancement in terms of tracking and the like?
Yeah. So they both companies benefited, right? When you get into an integration like this, where let's say you're the healthcare company and you're going to have this tight relationship with your fulfillment provider, that's a marriage, right? Because it takes a little time to do this integration. It sort of locks you into that fulfillment house. And so with that trust established, and this particular relationship here has been going on for years and years, and so it was no problem for them to take the next step and tie their two systems together. And so by doing that, though, the fulfillment house gets more reliable work. They know that this company that they're serving is going to be there for a while. They can rely on that work. They get automation in place so that the quality levels can be maintained. There's not a lot of human factors involved in this. Once it's set up, then other than the ordering of the literature, the rest of it is pretty much automated until you get to the production floor. And so let me see, I think I have some stuff here. Yeah, so the fulfillment house is sort of no longer a fulfillment commodity. Like their customer is not going to very easily go down the street to another fulfillment house and just try to get the best price, right? This is a value-added service that they've established here. As I said, it's a reliable, consistent business, and they're fulfilling more customer needs. There are more packages per day, so as they accumulate orders, instead of doing like a once-a-day file transfer from the medical care facility to the fulfillment house, it's ongoing throughout the day. Orders are just coming in real time, and so they can be multiple jobs per day can be created, and so you end up with more fulfillment throughout the day. Nurses have a place to go to place these orders, and the next phase, actually, they're talking about now doing digital communications with the patients. So where before it was just fulfillment of hard copy pieces, now there's a discussion going on because the Alchemy system can manage electronic communications as well, that they could extend that value to their customer. And so for the healthcare company, the patients are getting better care, better communications, and they can provide a good service to their patients. And by the way, I didn't mention this, but the patient records in Cerner are updated after the fulfillment goes out. So the chart for each patient says in it what date the literature was sent, what literature it was, and who it was sent to, of course, because it's in their patient record. So that closes the circle on what's in Cerner.
Gotcha. Okay. It sounds like it's a good marriage there in terms of everybody's getting added value in the life cycle there.
They are, and you don't see Cerner and Racami on here, but we benefited too, because we're using our technology in useful ways that can be replicated, for other companies.
Okay. So just jumping back to one of the things I had mentioned earlier, which is the concept that companies today, because they've got a variety of systems. It looks like Cerner here is, in the medical industry, has really created a standardized environment for the electronic medical records, but that's not necessarily the case in financial services, insurance, et cetera, where you've got lots of companies running sort of a fragmented environment with data silos in a variety of places. So what's the impact of those companies not integrating? How does that degrade their business and competitiveness?
Yeah, so let me start by just sort of talking about the where we are today. So those companies you just mentioned, over time, all of us actually have been impacted by sort of the consumerization of business. So we're used to the phones with all these different apps that we can download and do different things, and that's bled into business. And some of you might be aware of this company, Chief Martech. And Chief Martech, over the past few years, has been tracking the number of applications that businesses use for sales, for marketing, for internal production management, for all the things that we use it for printing. And you can see here along the timeline that it went from like approximately 150 companies that they could identify back in 2011 to over 8,000 today. So there's no shortage of software and hardware that you can use to get work out the door, right? Whatever business you're in, you have a lot of choices. So this is leading up to the answer of your question, that there's just a lot of tools out there that you can buy or that you've built yourself. So if you have a lot of like technical debt, you've over the last 20 years or whatever, you've built your own stuff and maintained it, and now the people that built it retired, and there's all kinds of things that go on with the legacy tools. And so this I thought was interesting too. This is another part of their report, and it shows that a lot of us think like print is like consolidation and print's going digital and all this stuff, but there actually was growth in the number of applications that are available to be purchased to be used for printing. Growth in video marketing, no surprise there. Conversational sort of marketing and chat, that's no surprise either, and so on. So, but I thought it was really interesting that the print actually showed up. There was a blip on this report here for print, and that there's big growth in applications that are being developed and used for printing. And so to get to the root of your question here, the big thing is really like cost and lost revenue. And this is a survey that was done for some larger organizations, I think 100 million in revenue and over, but even small companies can relate to this, where if you can't onboard customers fast enough, or you have a lot of errors that are happening, you're triaging all the time, every day is a dumpster fire, and you're trying to get stuff done and out the door, and it just doesn't run smoothly. So that results in a lot of different things, right? You're either going to have unhappy customers because you're missing deadlines and you're making mistakes, or your profit margins are not as high as they could be because it just costs you too much to run the business. And so a lot of enterprises don't really recognize this as, say, an integration issue. And that's one of the things that we're trying to bring to light with this webinar, is that integration can cause a lot of these problems that companies deal with. And so it's a siloed problem, right? You have data, documents, these resources that exist in a variety of systems that have been built or purchased over time. And for those larger organizations that are growing through acquisition, then you're acquiring those things, and you've got this silo problem. And a lot of companies recognize that some visibility would be important for them, but most of them don't have it. This survey said that less than half actually have like a dashboard or some kind of visibility into the overall process that they use to get work out the door. And it affects onboarding of customers and partners and various things. So fragmentation causes inefficiencies, and it is recognized by some organizations that this actually is the problem. And then they have to figure out how to solve it, right? Which we can talk about later. But the other thing is just changes in business. As organizations are being affected by digital transformation and disruption in what they do, a lot of them are changing their business models. They're targeting new customers. I mean, we know this at Racami. We grew up in the transactional market. There's plenty of customers there for us, but we feel like that's leveled off, and there's not a large wave of new customers that we're going to have there. So we've entered new markets, and as we've done that, we've recognized that it's impacting the type of systems that we need our software to integrate with. So as you go from like a transactional environment to, say, more of a marketing environment, you might integrate with, say, HubSpot or Marketo or Salesforce, or these kinds of things. And so there's all kinds of new or existing products that we haven't played with before, that as we get into these new markets, we realize we've got to do those integrations. So these changes that business are going through to stay alive and to grow, and the models are changing for some companies, then the tool sets that they use can be different, and that forces their hand on integration.
Okay.
All right, and so I mean, people know the issues, right? It's a lot of stress on IT and operations, other departments too, customer service, but so some of the things I deal with are related to order intake, or making sure that the offline and the online experiences are synchronized. The same messages are going out across offline and online, and that you can orchestrate work between the two. Sometimes I want print, sometimes I want electronic, sometimes that changes, right? Like today I want print, but I'm going to be gone for a month overseas, and so I switch it to electronic. And then when I come back, I'm going to switch it back to print. And maybe if you email me 3 times and I don't answer, you want to convert to a printed piece. So there's these interactions between the channels, and without integration, that's a really hard thing to do, because usually companies don't have like one system that crosses over. And so there's all kinds of different issues that people are dealing with here that stress out the organization. And this is this slide here I put in just kind of show the point that companies are facing these things. They recognize it, and they are consumers of services and technology related to integration. Some of them are going into SaaS platforms to try to help with this. And you see this little in the upper right-hand corner here, that there's about a 13% growth rate from year to year, compound growth rate that's projected here, and all having to do with just companies trying to find software and service providers that can help them handle the integration of all these applications that are available out there that they're using.
That actually brings up an interesting question of as companies try to, move forward and move to a software environment that includes SaaS for part of their platform. How do they sort of deal with, well, integration as a whole, but also integration in a world where some of your stuff is on premises and some of it's in the cloud?
Yeah, that's more common than ever today, and it'll continue to grow as the cloud becomes more popular, right? The model of the cloud, from an economic perspective, has been attractive because companies can use the infrastructure that Microsoft and Amazon provide, and it's scalable architecture, it's secure, and we couldn't spend enough money. We'd go bankrupt, right? Trying to build the same kind of infrastructure. So the economics are there to put it in the cloud, but data security has been one of those things, and I don't want to put my data in the cloud, is what we hear a lot. And that has, as far as I've seen, has been changing a lot. The culture is changing in organizations. They're becoming more accepting of using cloud infrastructures and SaaS applications. And so your question is a good one. It's going to be more and more common for people to integrate, organizations to integrate what they have internally with these SaaS products, and even between the SaaS products they're using, right? They might have 3 or 4 different SaaS products and they want to integrate those. And so, so there's different approaches, right? Depending on, a lot of it has to do with sort of the size of your company and the workload that you have. And so you see here, like there's manual data integration. This sort of, when you have infrequent need to integrate data from different systems, you might just do it manually. You'll have somebody go extract data from one, extract it from another, put it in a little data warehouse, or something like that. And so there's different needs depending on for integration that the approach you would take. There's middleware integration approaches, which actually could be applied in some of these others that I'll mention. But this is one where you have, let's say, 2 different systems, and you put some software in between, and it acts as the gateway between the 2 systems, allows them to share data between the 2 parts. A good example of this would be like an ETL tool, right? Extract, transform, and load. So you extract from one system, you transform it, you load it into the other, and you can go back the other way, right? This ETL interface between systems, and it tends to be sort of data focused. But you could take that also and have application-based integration. So instead of being more like data focused and going around the application, you're actually letting 2 applications talk to each other. This is usually done through APIs, right? Something like that, where you can connect the 2 together, and they share information between the 2 applications with no middleware in between. Now you could have middleware in between applications as well. So there's a place for that, which I'll show you later. Uniform access and common storage are ways that you can integrate. Uniform access is where it's like a federated model. You have 5 different systems, they all store data, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a system, a central system that users can access for reporting, for dashboarding, whatever, for interaction with this data so they can analyze it. But it's going to draw from the 5 systems, and it's going to grab that data when needed, and people will work with it in this central system. So that federated model. And there's pros and cons to that, right? The pro is like you can access all that data in real time, and the integration is a little bit overhead, but then you've got access to all that stuff. Some downsides might be that some systems that are there might not be tuned for constant access. Like they get pinged all the time by this central system, hey, give me some data, give me some data. And some systems just aren't tuned for that. They might be legacy tools, and so there's pros and cons to that. And then the common data storage, people have heard of this, is like a data lake or a data warehouse, where you take from all the existing systems the data, and on some recurring basis, you're going to update that data, and it's in this common area. The downside of that is that you've got new storage that you're eating up, and you've got this this separate system that you got to take care of the data. And so these approaches are deployed, Jeff, in a lot of different times, and depending on where the organization is and the size of the organization and the application itself, sometimes I can't really recommend one or the other because it depends on the application, right? Sometimes even the largest organization might find that the manual data integration for that particular use case makes sense, right? Others a small organization might find that uniform access makes a lot of sense, and that the putting in the 6 months or a year it's going to take to do that integration with 5 different systems is worth it, because from that point forward they're going to be saving money. Right. So the approach you choose really depends on your situation.
Okay. All right, just a time check here. We got about 15 minutes left, but I guess I'm listening to this last slide worth of data is potentially overwhelming in terms of the number of systems and integrations that have to happen. Where do you know how to, where do you start? What's the, how do you figure out where to, what needs what?
Yeah. So first of all, you have to have some problems, right? So, and everybody does, but you have to sort of figure out, do those problems relate to like data sitting in different places or applications not talking to each other? And that'll reveal itself with things like multiple data entry that's happening that people spend time on. I have a customer, for example, they just spend like 4 hours a day for one person keying orders into the shipping system, when it would be nice if they could integrate their order management tool with the shipping system, right? Something simple like that, but could save half a day's labor for one person every day. And so you identify those problems, and then you just start looking at data governance, like who's using the data, how do they need to use it, where is it stored, how do we protect it, what are all the rules around the data. You'll look at cloud service providers, you might look at data integrators, who can help me with this? Do I have the right people on board who can do an integration? Do I need to hire some people? You'll look at any systems you might need to update. I have actual customer opportunity that we're looking at now where the customers are not adopting their online payment system because the software that they use to run their business, which does provide a payment portal, you have to perform an upgrade on it in order to use the payment portal. And so there's over 200 enterprises that use this software, and only 2 of them have adopted the online portal because they don't want to go through the pain of the upgrade. And so, we're providing an alternative to that, but looking at systems and the updates that might need to be done to them is an important part of this process. And then,
even if the update is free from the company as a part of your software license and support, you still have all the costs within the IT organizations to actually do the update and then test everything.
100%. The regression testing, I mean, these kinds of systems that run government entities and so on, they're sophisticated, and an upgrade can introduce bugs just as well as it can fix them, right? So there's a lot of regression testing and things that go on there, and then you'll determine, from the approaches that I just went through, like which one makes sense for this particular project. So just some ideas on where you could start, the things to be aware of. And just to drive this point home, if there's different tools you can use, and I'll promote the middleware approach in this example, because let's say you take system A and you integrate it with D over here, and then you also, okay, we've got to integrate it with system E, and oh yeah, we got to integrate it with system F. And then you can draw this out, expand it out to how many systems you need to integrate. You can end up with, in this example, you get up, if all of them are integrated together, you'd have 15 integrations that have to be performed. That's a lot. Now, most times you're not going to integrate, all these different systems, but the point is that some middleware could make it easier if you have to integrate a handful of different tools that you're using. So, with that concept, then you're connecting these systems to middleware, which normalizes the data and provides, various use cases for people to access that data and explore it and, do the work that they do. So middleware can be a big part of that. And it also helps you with the internal integrations. So on the left-hand side, you have like, stuff that you're using inside the four walls of your company that might need to be integrated, but also stuff that's out in the cloud if you're using SaaS platforms and other things out there in the web. Then this concept of an integration platform ties them together and also supports online and offline. So if you're looking for this middleware tool, make sure you're looking for one that fits your particular company and how you need to deploy it. So that leads us into sort of, I mentioned Alchemy earlier. Alchemy is used for as a middleware tool. A lot of people know it for its dashboard and production control capabilities and the archive that it has and print management and all that. But it also serves an integration use. So I'll just maybe close out here with a couple of examples of how it's used in integration. I showed you the Cerner one earlier. This one is an integration with Salesforce, where there's a central marketing department. This is an insurance application, and the agents out in the field. And the agents have their own customer bases. They're responsible for growing their accounts and their customer base, and they use the Sales Genie tool to build their lists, to find people in their area that fit certain criteria, demographic, lifestyle, income, all that. Maybe they drive certain cars, and so we want to go market to them. And so the agents, sort of build their list, but the marketing department, central marketing department, fulfills it. So they have a relationship with, a provider, and they send lists over there, and then they print and mail. And what happens is that the agents have no clue. Like, did my stuff mail? Salesforce doesn't tell me. So what we did was we had Alchemy, which watches over the production process, provides proofing, online proofing on the dashboard. That they use it for the print management, managing inventory and all that, but also shares the statuses of jobs with Salesforce, so that the agents could log into Salesforce, and then because that's where they spend a lot of time, we don't want them having to log into a separate system, and then they can see statuses of jobs that they've initiated for marketing purposes. And so that's just an example of how you can integrate that way with Salesforce, very similar to Cerner, where the data is shared. Internally, it could be used also for, this is, by the way, another insurance company, but they grew through acquisition. So here's one company, here's another company. They have these different systems that they've acquired through acquisition. And so they're using the system to normalize what was a lot of different input formats. You see all these different print stream formats here and different systems that are capturing them, to centralize that, so that when you get finally to production, you can print and go to manual insertion, or you can print and go to automated insertion. And so as you draw the divide here on the screen, the right-hand side would be sort of the physical production, the left-hand side would be more of the data processing. And so this allows a simplification through integration of all these different formats and normalization to support printing. Let's see, this one is sort of a vertical integration. So it's a service bureau. They have their customers at the top here, and then they get data through different formats, different ways, through API and S3 buckets, SFTP, and they process. So this is an example of integration internally, where they have different tools for composition, for PDF indexing, and various steps in the process. They apply different components that they've purchased over time. And so this Alchemy tool sort of orchestrates that activity. The data is ingested into Alchemy, and then it passes it on to the different systems. So that's a kind of middleware integration that orchestrates the work and handshakes with the different systems, including people on the dashboard. Then people are out here doing proofing, making sure that the jobs are good and accepting them before they go down to the print vendors that this particular customer of ours outsources to. So our customer's only doing the data prep and the document composition and all the content management, and then they outsource to various print vendors, who then through a shared file, and this is another way to integrate, there's a control file that goes to that print vendor and says, here's a listing of all the pieces I want you to produce for me. And then the print vendor updates that file and it's ingested back into Alchemy so that we can tag all of those mail pieces that they did actually mail. And then a last one here, Jeff, is the consolidation of multiple facilities. And I mentioned this earlier, where your internal facility has processes that were built to drive equipment, printers and inserters and bindery equipment and so on at that facility. But taking that work and sending it to another facility's production devices might not work, because maybe they have different manufacturers that they've purchased from. They might be using different barcodes. Their workflows could be different. Maybe you have to print it in reverse order. The imposition maybe has to be different. And so, there's a need to not only transform the job itself, but also the business data. So over here at this facility, when they run with their MIS system, they have a part number for a number 10 envelope. But over at this facility, their MIS system has the same number 10 envelope, but they have a different part number that they use. And their job numbers are different. Like over here, we use a 5-digit job number. Over here, it's a 10-digit job number. Why? Because we bought facility 1 and we bought facility 2, right? And they operate differently. So you could use Alchemy to not only transform the jobs, but the business information. So that when people log in at one facility, they're seeing things that make sense to them. When they log in from another facility, it makes sense to them. And that's all done with this Alchemy system. So that's a lot of information, Jeff, on various integration approaches and benefits and stuff like that. And so maybe you could give us a wrap up on what you think about all that.
Yeah, if you want to go to that next slide, I mean, you can see that this slide, obviously a different format, but is very similar to the one that Matt just showed you in terms of the variety of components that go into making up an integrated platform, and how you get through this. I mean, I think there's two components here. One is figuring out what you want to do. So what's the end point, and what are you hoping to get in terms of value, and then how are you going to do it? And I think that well, quite honestly, Madison and Racami are well suited for that in terms of at Madison Advisors, we're very good at the what do you want to do and what are you hoping to get from it, and Racami is much more on the how are we going to do it and what are you going to get from it as well side of things. So I think with that, Andrea, do we have a couple of questions?
Hey, Jeff, yes, we do. So let me read the first one. Integrations can break when system configurations change, data changes, or systems are upgraded. How do you protect against this?
Yeah, I can take that one. So it's very true. So you get all these, like you see on screen, all these systems might be glued together, and you go and upgrade one of them because the vendor came out with a new version, and maybe it works a little differently than the previous version, and now automation breaks, or something it's not compatible with the other system it was integrated with. And so there are things you can do between the tools, like you can set up data validations that take place and monitoring of processes. So if a process does break, then the event notification goes out to IT people or whoever needs to know that, hey, this process is not working properly. It either stalled, or there's missing data that might be recognized from the data validation routines. And so there's things that you can put in place to protect against it. It could still happen, of course. Another thing to do, just as a good practice, is to have different environments. So you might have a development environment, a testing environment, and a production environment. And so as you do an upgrade, you'll do that in your development environment, get it working to your satisfaction there, go into a UAT or a testing environment, test it there, get all the users involved at that stage, and they can test the UIs and how they interact with it. And then with that acceptance, then you can roll it into production. And that protects you also from anything that might break from an upgrade or even a configuration change. It might not be an upgrade, it could just be a change in configuration of a system.
This also seems like a good reason to go with something like the middleware approach that you showed, because then I only really have to worry about the integration between that one application and the core system, if you will, in terms of making sure that the data is all mapped, especially if new data becomes available from the application. Integrating it seems easier with a middleware approach rather than one-to-one approach.
Definitely, yeah, I agree.
All right, there's another question. Well, it's more like a comment, but maybe you guys can expand on that. It says, it seems that once you go down the road of integrating systems, there is no turning back. You'll always need to maintain these systems.
Yeah, that's true. When you get into integrations, you are dealing with some complexity. So you're probably going to have somebody on staff who's like a systems administrator, or you might have a DBA, or maybe both. You have these kinds of people that can pull off the integration, and then you're there, like you're integrated, and you're going to be maintaining things over time, and you're going to need those people. Or the alternative is you could outsource, right, to somebody who has sort of like a managed services contract. And there's companies that do this where they will manage your infrastructure, they'll manage your applications, they'll manage, various things, and then you're just a user of your own systems, right? You don't have to maintain them, and so that's an alternative approach.
Okay, we don't have any more questions, so I'm just gonna wrap it up now. Thank you, Matt and Jeff. That was great information, and thanks to all of you for being part of the discussion today. Remember, we will send you a follow-up email with the webinar recording in the next 2 days, so you'll get that. And for more information about Racami, visit racami.com. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Great, thank you.